Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
Like desires are different than actions. And like, he made the example of like, love doesn't equal affirmation. He said, if your child came home and said like, Mom, I'm fat, I'm gonna go on a super strict diet, you'd be saying, no, you're not fat, we're gonna get you the help you need. But like, I don't think that is a good example.
Yeah, so this is the insidious nature of Christianity in the United States when it comes to these kinds of bigoted notions. They won't come out and most of them won't just come out and say that it's wrong to be gay. They will say it in this very convoluted way, and you really have to read between the lines. It's almost like a dog whistle in a sense for those people that know that it's wrong to be gay or bi or trans or queer. People in the audience, the members of the church, will hear the message that, okay, that affirms how I believe that it's wrong. For those that are not necessarily looking for that, or people that are more on the fence, it will give them language that will assuage any sort of fears that they are bigoted. And I've had so many fucking arguments with people. I've had arguments with people close to me, and this goes back decades. I have more recently stopped having these arguments with people, partially because I'm just bored with it, because it doesn't go anywhere. But I have had arguments, and they will run in circles, and it will seem like if you don't listen carefully, they'll have phrases like, we don't presume to know what God wants. And if my son came to me and said he was gay, I would love him as much as if he weren't gay. And nothing would ever change that. Okay, so if you just heard that, you would think, oh, so we're good. But then they start going down this road, like what Sara is detecting, and she's wise and smart to hear the words and the message, that the analogy of if your kid came to you and said that they're fat, which is a whole other thing, by the way. It's an interesting analogy. It's an interesting example. You can love and accept without affirming, meaning that I accept that you're gay or trans or fat, according to what Sara is saying that the minister was talking about. But I'm not affirming it, meaning the sense that I get from the message is that this isn't what God ultimately wants for you. And with the contemporary evangelical movement, there is, perhaps for healthy reasons, an acceptance of human mistakes and foibles and sin. People will have histories of addiction, crime, violence, and they are loved like the prodigal son, right? And you will have ministers that will stand up and talk about how they used to have these lives and they saw the light and they were born again, or they understood that the way was with God. They might even occasionally fall backwards, into the way that they talk about it. It's not like sin. It's more like falling out of what God wants for you, that kind of language, which is much more amorphous and less about it. It sounds like they're not saying right and wrong, but they are fucking talking about right and wrong. It's very obvious to me what they are saying. Now, maybe not all the time. We're talking about thousands and thousands of churches and thousands of ministers saying millions of messages, and there's a lot of different things that are said. So I'm generalizing, but every time that I've had this inane conversation, it all comes down to, and when I can actually get them to be honest, because a lot of the times I feel like I'm what people on the internet will call gaslit, but what I would call is it's crazy making. That they run in circles, and when I have the ability to corner someone, and I actually did this with one of my friends, that I felt comfortable enough to just go after him, and I wasn't going after him. I was just getting him to commit to his belief system. And when when I was coming at him and saying, okay, well, it sounds like, no, I'm not saying it's a sin. Okay, well, but da-da-da-da. And then I finally got down to this core idea, and it felt so satisfying because I'm like, okay, thank you. Thank you for committing to the fact that you believe that God does not want people to be gay, and that it's wrong and it's a sin. It's a sin against God to be gay. You have finally admitted it. And that we disagree on. You believe that in the Bible it says you should not be gay. As long as I know my enemy, then I know my enemy. But to fucking dance around it constantly and to have all these obscure analogies, it is just an insidious way of spreading propagandized bigotry. And it is wrong. It is immoral. And I believe if there is a God, it is against God.
Sexual identity, or like in that way, if someone is, feeling something about themselves, like who is that for us to change their mind? I didn't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I'm more progressive.
Okay, so I think I understand what Sarah's saying. And then he says, yeah, I don't agree with that either. I don't know what he's saying. He could be completely agreeing with everything that she's saying, or he is agreeing with part of what she's saying. We can't know.
Create like conflict between me and you, or like me and you and our kids, or like me and you and our family. Like I don't want that to cause a division.
Yeah.
Like it overall should be a very positive influence.
Yeah. I kind of think that's why they don't talk about it a ton, is because they're like, we want everyone to feel comfortable here, and so we don't want to focus on that. We want to focus.
And I'll point out that that is fine in certain circumstances, but if we're talking, it's sort of like if the church was to be asked, what is your position on slavery or something? It's extreme, but go with me on this. Let's say sex slavery around the world. And you were to ask a church, well, what's your position? And they're just like, we're just not going to get into that. Well, what? Even if that were true, which would be weird that you would say, if you were anti-slavery, you would imagine that you would say it, right? So weird, but also answer me now. Now that you're thinking about it, how do you feel about slavery? Well, when we're talking about oppression of people for who they are, like sexual orientation or gender identity, what's your position, church? We're not going to get into that. What? Even if that were true, that is wrong. That is immoral. To be ambivalent or to be avoidant or to be undecided or to be non-affirming of fairness and justice. If my mom, who is a devout Christian, can read the Bible and look at a lot of things in there. I mean, there's a lot of things in the Bible that we all decide, most Christians anyway in the United States would decide are wrong, like polygamy and slavery, literally. And, it's an old text. It involves a different culture from a long time ago. So, we have to search today, personally and as a congregation, about what is the way. To me, the way is no harm. That is what you could say is sin. To me, theologians and religious scholars I have talked to do not necessarily see it that way. There's like sacrament and not having the hubris to understand the universe and God, and there's a place for ceremony and tradition, and therefore, what's the difference between tradition and sin and da-da-da. There's a lot of thousands of years of debate that I can't summarize here, obviously, even if I tried. But it's, I think, a problem, especially for a church in Minneapolis, a progressive blue city, for them to be like, we just don't really have a position. Now, as I've already said, is it possible that if they were pressed, they would say, so we completely agree with Sara, but we just want a place for everyone to come to feel safe, to actually focus on Jesus and God and acceptance and love and community. And if we start getting into that kind of stuff, it's going to consume us completely, as we've seen in other churches or in the past or whatever, maybe. And maybe therefore they can't come forward. I don't know. But it is the way that he responds, it is kind of funny. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has. So I guess if I were Sara, I would say, let's say that we had kids and the kids come out as trans or gay. How would you feel about it? What would you do? And if he says, I would love that kid like any, okay, good. I would assume that. But would you have hopes that they would change? No, it's not okay that we judge. That's between them and God. Okay, what do you think God wants? Oh, I don't think about what God. And they'll run you in circles. and deep down, there's an answer there that they believe it is wrong. It's against nature. It's against God. It's a sin. It's in the Bible, and they just can't admit it. They don't want to, or the way that they've been ministered to is in this really goofy, avoidant way or something. It would be so easy for him to say, "Oh, I get some idea. The church does kind of avoid this topic, but I'll tell you, for me, I am absolutely certain that LGBTQ people are not sinning in God's eyes. They are free in God's eyes and in Jesus' eyes to be who they are. Why would God make them that way if that weren't the case? Plus, there's no harm, and I celebrate it. So it wouldn't be hard for him to say, 5% of that.
Focus on the other things that pertain to everyone that we can reach and grow.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, obviously, listening to that service gave me a good outlook on what their stance is. Mm-hmm. I can't relate to that.
Okay, she's about to say, and I would hate to say I'll never go again, but that is kind of what I want to say. And yeah, I would imagine Sara would contemplate that. If it's not a big deal to him, which maybe it's not, then they should just pick a different church that is pro-LGBTQ. There's tons of them in Minneapolis.
I would go again for like a holiday or like something with your family or, and like I'll go with a good attitude, but it's something that I would be very invested in. And if anything, I would be more interested in trying something different.
Yeah.
Okay. He seemed maybe open to, and he's doing his typical thing. And it seems like they're not having more in-depth conversations off camera. So I don't know what to make of it. She talks about him like he is a caring, loving, considerate person all the time. It's possible that she just has rose-colored glasses. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, the other thing I've been wondering is if their chemistry is mainly Sara creating most of the chemistry. Sort of like Meg and Mason actually seemed to be created mostly by Meg's energy, and Mason was just like, okay. Not to say that Mason didn't like Meg, but I wonder if Sara were to cool off a little bit regarding her passion or intensity, if they might crumble because he doesn't have that tendency or something. I don't know. But the way that she talks about him, I just have to trust her that he is a good person. She talks about him that way. Now, she barely knows him, but I don't know. At least I hope.
Other churches, like, I don't want you to feel like you have to.
Yeah.
But like maybe we could do something together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to it. I know where my views are, but who am I to say that I'm right and everyone else is wrong? And it's not my job to convince someone or tell them that I'm right. It's my job to just be excited for everyone.
What do you mean, not your job to tell people they're wrong? Or
Yeah, it's fine, but that is often the refrain of people that in their heart and in their minds, they know what is right and what is wrong. And they just say that, and maybe even convince themselves of that. And I don't know about him, but I've heard that phrase from people that when you actually corner them, they absolutely know what's right and wrong. And so do I. I do not claim that I would say, who am I to say what's right and wrong? I know what's right and wrong. I know that oppression is wrong. I know that bigotry is fucking wrong. I know to make gay, lesbians, bisexual, trans, queer people, to make them feel lesser, to make them feel like they don't belong, to not affirm that, to offset all of the oppression that's happening to them on a daily basis is wrong.
I don't know. None of us know. But all I know is like, this is a community that I feel connected to, and I feel, special when I go, kind of like, it makes me feel good and I get it. You don't necessarily get it, but that's fine. And we'll maybe find something that makes us both feel that way, where we start that tradition together. And that's where we go to church, or that's where we go to do something that makes us feel fulfilled. But
now, I don't know how Ben feels about any of this. If I were Sara, I would corner him in several ways. And if he didn't see it my way, and if I were in love with him, I would try to change his mind. And I would say, that's wrong. And let me tell you why that's wrong. Let me provide the foundation for philosophically why that is wrong. Even if he does have some of the belief system that one might worry about, it's not his fault. He didn't invent it. And it's hard to be in the world and to choose to be a part of a church and to be told things and to be influenced by that. It's certainly not his fault. Every adult has a responsibility to figure this sort of stuff out, particularly if you have the privilege to seek out other points of view and make decisions on your own. But I'm not directing any of this at Ben. I don't even know if it applies to Ben.
No, I don't want to say, like, I've never envisioned, like, my significant other to support, because I know everyone's different, but it is, like, difficult for me to, like, I want to bring you to Pride and, like, totally know. And I know you would, but like, it's just hearing that service. I just, like, know that that's a huge value of mine, making sure everyone feels comfortable going into it.
And I'll throw out there that if Ben does have worrisome points of view, and Sara were to know that or suspect that or conclude that, it would be viable, in my mind, for someone in Sara's shoes to say, well, I love him and I believe in him and I believe I can subtly and not so subtly change his mind. He just hasn't had that kind of influence. I'm going to bring him to Pride. I'm going to find another church. I'm going to listen to podcasts in front of him. I'm not going to, full court press him, but I'm going to just, in my way, he'll be absorbing other kinds of influences. And I believe, based on my very secure conclusion that he is a good moral person, that he will discard those points of view. I think that's a viable approach.
Be loved for who they are, not like, that's what makes the world so beautiful is the diversity.
Yeah. And that's where I'm at too. I'll go to Pride with you, and I believe in that, and I believe in equality, and these differences are beautiful and diversity is beautiful, and that's how I feel like at the end of the day it's love that we need to portray into the world.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I've heard these phrases. I can't know what's in Ben's heart and mind, but I have heard these phrases from religious bigots. They will say that, and they will have heard it so many times they have it down pat. It's not a manipulation. They believe what they're saying, but they are avoiding saying what they truly believe, which is that it's wrong, it's a sin, it's against God. They will say, I love diversity, I will celebrate, and it's in the Bible. It's right there. Now, what they'll say is, I can't propose to say I know the Word of God, but it's in the Bible several times, because it is in the Bible several times, and it will dictate their behavior. They might not discriminate. If they had a gay coworker, they might be totally fair with that person. Maybe, like, the rub comes when it comes to advocacy, activism, voting, and their own children, right?
Feels good talking to you about this. Mm-hmm. It is such a value of mine.
Now, I want to be clear. I don't know if Ben is one of those individuals that is obscuring. I have no idea. There's some indication that he's not obscuring, that he is at least in part, or for the important bits, very much aligned with Sara. I can't tell. All I can tell you is I've heard that from bigoted Christians.
I know. And I have so many more values, but
Yeah.
like it is important to me.
You know, we talk about it and we'll continue to talk about it as it comes up. But it kind of minimizes the other values that we see and that we relate about each other.
You're right.
I feel like it creates almost like a divide by the amount of we talk about it. And it's like, it's not even a divide though either.
I don't think it's a divide either. I just think
It's kind of interesting that he used the word divide. Why would you use that word if you are on the same page, that the way that you're talking? So, yeah. Now, if he is saying, I would hope that the reason why we're together is not 50% because of that. There's a lot of things that would make us a good couple or would align. There's a lot more values other than that, which is true, So if that's all he's saying, then that's all he's saying. But why would you use the word divide? Plus, I would imagine that Ben would say to himself, this is really important to my fiance, and it's not as important to me to talk about it this much, but I value that. And so let me prove to her, which he hasn't really done. He's mostly kind of, but I don't know. I can't tell.
but it's heavy topics where some people have really strong views.
Well, do you feel like you do have that clarity?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I do have that clarity from you.
Good.
Like, I know your heart. I know where you stand. Like, I've met your friends. I've met your LGBT friends. You've met my sister. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not a doubt about who you are as a person.
I guess that is true that he did have a gay friend, but that doesn't, I've seen that too. I've seen bigoted Christians who have gay friends, and they are absolutely fair and non-discriminatory, but they have a line, and it might kick in again with their friends or their own behavior. I have a friend who is very anti-gay and trans people. I mean, he's a friend from childhood. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he will even admit that if he were left to his own devices, he would sin by acting on his impulse with same-sex relationships. And through God, he has prayed away the gay. So sometimes that's the situation. I'm not saying anything about Ben, but I don't know. What am I saying? I'm not saying anything. That just popped in my head.
Like, it has been so easy between me and you. Like, it has.
Yeah.
There's been no question. Like, but like, I always just assumed I would meet a guy who aligns in every single aspect. And there would be no problems. And that's just like, that's ignorant. That's just not life. And there's no problems between us. But
Yeah, I think that is a healthy way of looking at it. To require every single box to be checked would mean that you would be lonely in all likelihood. Plus, in today's landscape, younger men are much more likely, or actually I should say that younger heterosexual people are much more likely to be misaligned regarding politics. Younger men are becoming more conservative and younger women are becoming more liberal. If you're heterosexual, if you want to increase your pool a little bit, you have to have some flexibility there, maybe with the hope and the expectation that you'll change it, or you'll influence each other in some ways. Maybe there's some conservative points of view that you can get behind, who knows? Not the bigoted ones, of course. It's hard. And I imagine that as time goes on, because the trend seems to be getting worse, that everyone's just going to have to figure out how to, and I think actually we're seeing a number of examples, Devin and Virginia as well. Again, I will remind people that I did ask my contact if she didn't work on this season, but she, I asked her about politics and religion in other seasons because it's the theme this season. And she said that it's always being taught, she doesn't know precisely, there's no measurement of this. And she works anyway. And so my sense is that it always is being talked about. It's even suggested by the showrunner every morning to talk about certain topics, including this sometimes, in the pods. And it's likely that either it is just the interesting storyline of the show, or they didn't have other storylines to highlight. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.